There'll be no beepers worn in this house.
Oh, yo, what's up, Uncle Phil? My mom let me wear it in Philly.
That's because she's your mother and she loves you. I'm your uncle. I just try not to hurt you.
There's a secret formula to making a hit TV show, but there's no formula for when to end it. These 90s juggernauts started as must-see TV, but slowly became shows you just left on in the background. We'll break down exactly when they jumped the shark and the jaw-dropping signs that the magic was gone. One show's decline was so obvious, the finale was barely even advertised. 1. Northern Exposure.
This is now playing golf in a thunderstorm, defined as absurd, masochistic, and totally insane.
Oh, come on, son. Look at him out there, quacking away like a couple of mallards on a bars.
I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about me.
Many people are crazy about the quirky fish-out-of-water story. And in the early 90s, no show did it better than Northern Exposure. The series about a New York City doctor, Joel Fleischman, who is forced to practice in the tiny, eccentric town of Sicily, Alaska, was pure magic. It was funny, philosophical, and beautifully weird. For its first few seasons, it was one of the smartest and most original shows on television, winning a pile of Emmy Awards. The show was a perfect blend of unforgettable characters, from the philosophical ex-astronaut Maurice to the wise radio DJ Chris Stevens. But not all things are what they seem. The show's magic was tied to the journey of its main character, Dr. Fleischman. His slow transformation from a cynical city slicker to someone who appreciated the strange beauty of Sicily was the heart of the show. Then, halfway through the final season, the actor who played him, Rob Morrow, left the series. The thing nobody tells you is how you keep a show going when its central premise has walked out the door. The writers tried to replace him with a new city doctor and his wife combo, but it was like trying to put a new engine in a car that had already run out of road. The final episodes felt aimless and hollow. The quirky charm that once felt so natural now felt forced and contrived. The show that was once a critical darling limped to a quiet and unsatisfying finish in 1995. It should have ended when its main character's story did, but it stuck around just a little too long, leaving a smudge on an otherwise perfect legacy. But if you think losing a main character is bad, wait until you see what happens when a show loses its entire reason for being. 2. Beverly Hills 90210.
First day of school. Strange city, new house, no friends. I'm psyched.
In 1990, a cultural bomb went off. That bomb was Beverly Hills 90210. The story of Midwestern twins, Brandon and Brenda Walsh, moving to the glitz and glamour of Beverly Hills was an instant phenomenon. For its first 4 seasons, the show was a perfect time capsule of 90s teen life. It tackled serious issues while delivering all the drama, fashion, and love triangles you could handle. The high school years at West Beverly High were iconic. Who could forget the drama at the Peach Pit or the love story of Dylan and Brenda? It was must-see TV that defined a generation. The problem is, you can't stay in high school forever. The moment the gang threw their graduation caps in the air was the moment the show should have started planning its goodbye. Instead, it went on for 6 more seasons. What many overlooked is that the show's title and premise were about being teenagers in a specific, wealthy zip code. The college years and the adult years that followed turned the show from a groundbreaking teen drama into a generic primetime soap opera. The storylines became more and more ridiculous, with characters getting caught up in amnesia plots, cults, and countless relationship dramas that started to feel repetitive. To put it mildly, the cast became a revolving door, with main characters like Brenda, Dylan, and Brandon leaving, only to be replaced by a string of forgettable new faces. It ran for a full decade, finally ending in the year 2000, long after the magic of West Beverly High was gone. The show became a victim of its own success, but our next show was so popular that its own star had to fight to end it. 3. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Lord, help me now! Pardon me. Hey, look, Uncle Phil, no disrespect, man, but you got to watch where you parking that thing.
Now this is a story all about how a sitcom's run got flipped, turned upside down. When The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air debuted in 1990, it was a breath of fresh air. The show's premise of a street-smart kid from Philly moving in with his wealthy relatives in Bel-Air was brilliant. It was the perfect vehicle for the incredible charisma of a young Will Smith. For its first 4 or 5 seasons, the show was a comedy giant. It had a perfect mix of laugh-out-loud funny moments and surprisingly heartfelt, serious episodes that have become legendary. The chemistry of the Banks family was undeniable, and the show was a ratings powerhouse. But here's the thing, nobody tells you. The show was never supposed to last for 6 seasons. Will Smith himself felt the show had run its course by the end of season 4, when his character was getting ready to move out and start his adult life. The story had reached a natural conclusion. However, the show was so popular and the fan outcry for more was so loud that the network convinced him to come back for 2 more years. And you could feel the difference. The final 2 seasons, especially the last one, just felt tired. The jokes were a little less sharp, and the storylines, like Will's mom moving to California and the family planning to sell the mansion, felt like the writers were just stretching things out to fill time. The show ended with a finale where the family goes their separate ways, which was a fitting end, but it was an ending that probably should have happened a season or 2 earlier. The Fresh Prince managed a decent landing, but our next sitcom just kept building the same thing over and over until the whole house of cards collapsed. 4. Home Improvement.
Gosh, I've had this thing a long time. You get to take stuff for granted after a while, Don't respect it like you should. Know what I'm getting at?
Not even close, Tim.
In the 90s, Tim the Tool Man Taylor was the king of television. Home Improvement, starring comedian Tim Allen, was a ratings juggernaut for almost its entire run. The show, which premiered in 1991, was a simple and brilliant comedy. It was about a well-meaning but accident-prone host of a home improvement show called Tool Time and his life with his wife Jill and their 3 sons. The humor came from Tim's obsession with more power and the gentle, funny clashes between men and women. The chemistry between Tim, his co-host Al, and his wise, mysterious neighbor Wilson was comedy gold. For years, it was one of the most watched shows in America. The problem with a show built on a simple formula is that the formula can get old. After 8 seasons and over 200 episodes, Home Improvement had simply run out of ideas. How many times can Tim misunderstand Jill's feelings? How many times can he have a heart-to-heart with Wilson over the fence? How many times can he cause an explosion on the set of Tool Time? The thing is, the show never really evolved. The characters stayed pretty much the same, and the jokes, while still charming, became incredibly repetitive. The final season, which aired in 1999, saw a noticeable dip in quality as the writers struggled to come up with fresh stories. The network reportedly offered Tim Allen a staggering $50 million to do a 9th season, but he wisely turned it down, knowing the show had reached its expiration date. A show about a married couple can get stale, but our next show proved that adding a baby can make things even worse. 5. Mad About You.
Well, some total nut gives you one compliment, suddenly he's having breakfast with us. We should be calling the police.
Yes, that's what we should be doing. Hello, police. Yes, a man just came into my house, and he tap danced, he brought me bagels, and he called me a genius. Yeah, thank you. They're on their way.
Mad About You was the quintessential 90s sitcom for adults. Premiering in 1992, it starred Paul Reiser and Helen Hunt as Paul and Jamie Buckman, a newly married couple navigating life in New York City. For its first few seasons, it was perfect. The show was a smart, funny, and deeply relatable look at the small, everyday moments of a relationship. The chemistry between Reiser and Hunt was electric, and the writing was sharp and witty. It was a show for grown-ups that didn't talk down to its audience, and it was a critical and commercial success. What many overlooked is that the creators of the show had a perfect ending in mind. They wanted to end the series after its 5th season with the birth of Paul and Jamie's daughter, Mabel. This would have been a beautiful, full-circle conclusion to the story of their early years of marriage. But the network wanted more. The show was a hit, so it was renewed for a 6th and then a 7th season. And that's when the magic started to fade. The introduction of the baby completely changed the show's dynamic, shifting it from a witty romantic comedy into a more standard family sitcom. The final season even jumped forward in time in its finale to show Mabel as a grown-up, a move that many fans felt was a strange and unsatisfying end to the story they had loved. To put it mildly, it was a classic case of a show not knowing when to say goodbye. From sitcoms to dramas, our next show took a beloved premise and stretched it into a repetitive weekly lesson. 6. Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. When Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman premiered in 1993, it was a smash hit. The story of a female doctor from Boston, Michaela Quinn, who moves to the rough frontier town of Colorado Springs in the 1860s, was a fantastic premise. It was a wholesome, family-friendly show that mixed adventure, romance, and history. Jane Seymour was perfect in the lead role, playing Dr. Mike with a mix of grace and grit. The show was celebrated for its positive values and its willingness to tackle complex issues of the Old West. The central romance between Dr. Mike and the rugged mountain man Byron Sully was one of the great TV love stories of the decade. The show was a Saturday night staple for families across the country. But after 6 seasons and 150 episodes, the formula started to wear thin. The thing nobody tells you about shows with a strong moral compass is that they can easily become preachy. In the later seasons, Dr. Quinn became a problem of the week show. Every episode would introduce a new social issue, a new prejudice for the town to overcome, or a new medical crisis that only Dr. Mike could solve. The storylines became predictable. While the show's heart was always in the right place, the repeated moral lessons and the constant stream of dangers facing the small town started to feel less like compelling drama and more like a formula. The show ended in 1998, but many fans felt its true peak was a few years earlier, before the frontier town started to feel less like a real place and more like a stage for weekly lectures. Dr. Quinn repeated its lessons, but our next show repeated its mysteries until the truth was buried under a pile of confusion. 7. The X-Files.
No trouble.
In 1993, The X-Files changed television forever. The story of 2 FBI agents, the believer Fox Mulder and the skeptic Dana Scully, investigating unsolved cases involving paranormal phenomena, was groundbreaking. The show's dark cinematic style, its brilliant Monster of the Week episodes, and its sprawling, overarching government conspiracy storyline captivated audiences. The chemistry between David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson was legendary. For its first 5 or 6 seasons, The X-Files was one of the coolest, smartest, and scariest shows on TV. The mantra, "The truth is out there," became a cultural catchphrase. But the truth is, the show should have ended much, much sooner than it did. The central mythology of the show, the alien conspiracy, became incredibly complicated and convoluted over time. To put it mildly, it was a tangled mess. The perfect ending would have been around season 7, when Mulder seemingly discovered the truth and was abducted. But the show kept going. Mulder disappeared for a while, replaced by a new agent, and when he came back, the mythology just got weirder and less satisfying. What many overlooked is that the original 9-season run, which ended in 2002, had already gone on too long. Then, years later, they brought it back for 2 more revival seasons. These new seasons were a critical failure, further tarnishing the show's legacy with confusing plots and a weak conclusion. It's a classic example of a brilliant show that was stretched far past its breaking point. The X-Files had a mystery problem, But our next show had a cast problem, as it kept going long after all the original stars had checked out. 8. ER.
You wonder why I slept with him on the first date?
Really? First date? No kidding.
Yeah. He rang the doorbell. Next thing I knew, we were on the kitchen floor.
Kitchen floor? Jeez, I gotta start dating again.
When ER burst onto the scene in 1994, it was a television revolution. The show, set in the emergency room of a bustling Chicago hospital, was unlike any medical drama that had come before it. It was fast-paced, chaotic, and incredibly realistic. The show launched the careers of massive stars, most notably George Clooney. The original cast, including Anthony Edwards, Juliana Margulies, and Noah Wyle, was one of the best ensembles in TV history. For its first 5 or 6 seasons, ER was a ratings titan and a critical darling, a perfect blend of high-stakes medical crises and compelling personal drama. The problem with a show that runs for 15 seasons is that almost no one sticks around that long. One by one, the original cast members left to pursue other projects. George Clooney was the first major departure, and by season 8, the entire original core group was gone. The thing is, the show kept going, and going, and going, for another 7 years. It became a constant revolving door of new doctors and nurses, with each new character getting their own dramatic backstories and love interests. While some of the new cast members were great, the show lost the magical chemistry that had made it so special in the first place. The medical cases became more and more outrageous, and the show devolved into a standard soap opera, a far cry from its gritty, realistic roots. It finally ended its run in 2009, long after most of its original fans had flatlined. ER lost its cast, but our next show was so popular, the cast was paid a fortune to stick around, maybe a season too long. 9. Friends.
You were my first kiss with Rachel?
You were my first kiss ever!
What did I marry in?
Could a show be any more 90s? Friends, which premiered in 1994, wasn't just a sitcom, it was a global cultural event. The story of 6 friends navigating life and love in New York City was the perfect blend of humor and heart. The cast had an electric chemistry that a million imitators have tried and failed to replicate. For most of its 10-year run, it was the biggest comedy on the planet, a show that defined a decade and created countless catchphrases and memorable moments. It was, for many years, the perfect sitcom. But even the most perfect things can overstay their welcome. While Friends remained popular until its very end in 2004, many fans and critics agree that the quality took a noticeable dip in the last couple of seasons. The thing nobody tells you is that by the end, the cast was being paid $1 million per episode each. That kind of money makes it very tempting to keep a show going, even if the creative well is running a bit dry. The most criticized storyline of the later years was the romance between Joey and Rachel. It felt forced, out of character, and went against years of the show building up the epic Ross and Rachel love story. The characters, once sharp and witty, started to become caricatures of themselves. It was still funny, but the effortless magic of the early seasons was gone. The finale was a massive event that brought the story to a satisfying close, but many felt that the journey to get there had been padded with an extra season or 2 of filler. Friends stretched out its relationships, but our next show was about a family that was stretched apart until the original premise was gone. 10. Party of Five. Party of Five was one of the most acclaimed teen dramas of the 90s. Premiering in 1994, it had a powerful and heartbreaking premise. It was about the 5 Salinger siblings who are forced to raise themselves after their parents are taken from them in a car accident. The show was a raw and honest look at grief, responsibility, and the struggle to keep a family together against all odds. It was praised for its realistic portrayal of difficult subject matter and launched the careers of stars like Neve Campbell and Jennifer Love Hewitt. For its first 3 or 4 seasons, it was a beautifully crafted and deeply emotional series. The problem is, the core of the show was about these kids surviving on their own. As the seasons went on, the characters inevitably grew up. They went to college, got married, and started their own lives. The central premise, the 5 of them united under one roof against the world, began to dissolve. What many overlooked is that once the oldest brother, Charlie, got married and the other siblings moved out, the show lost its unique hook. It became just another drama about young adults dealing with relationship problems. The writers introduced new, often melodramatic storylines to try and keep things interesting, but the raw, emotional core of the show was gone. It was canceled after its 6th season in 2000, a decision that most fans agreed was the right one and probably should have been made a year or 2 earlier. That show lost its family focus, but our next show got lost in space, repeating the same story for 7 long years. 11. Star Trek Voyager.
I'm sorry, Lieutenant, but whatever it is, you're going to have to take care of it yourself.
Oh, it's all right. It's just a scratch, really. You know, I like you better this way.
In 1995, the Star Trek franchise launched its boldest show yet. Star Trek Voyager was about the crew of a brand new starship that has flung 75,000 light-years across the galaxy into an uncharted region of space. Their mission was no longer to explore, but simply to survive and find a way home. It was a fantastic premise, full of potential for high-stakes drama and true exploration of the unknown. The show introduced the franchise's first female captain, Catherine Janeway, a brilliant and commanding leader. The early seasons were exciting, with new aliens, strange space anomalies, and the constant tension of being lost and alone. But the journey home turned into a long, long slog. The thing is, for a show about a ship desperately trying to get home, they seemed to spend an awful lot of time stopping to check out random planets and getting into Monster of the Week style adventures. You see, the show fell into a repetitive formula. A problem would arise, the crew would solve it by the end of the episode, and things would go back to normal, with very little progress made on their larger journey. There were countless opportunities for them to find a shortcut home that were always snatched away at the last minute, a trick that became frustratingly predictable. After 7 seasons, the show ended with a finale that saw them finally reach Earth. But many fans felt the 7-year journey was padded with too much filler and too many missed opportunities for meaningful, long-term storytelling. Voyager got stuck in a formula, but our next show started as a brilliant satire before becoming a formulaic sitcom. 12. The Drew Carey Show.
Liver. It's delicious. Wherever you got it, you should shop there from now on. I got it at the morgue.
Man, that's a terrible name for a supermarket.
The Drew Carey Show, which premiered in 1995, was the perfect blue-collar sitcom for its time. Starring comedian Drew Carey as a fictionalized version of himself, it was about an average guy with a buzz cut and glasses working a dead-end office job in Cleveland, Ohio. The show was known for its quirky humor, its great ensemble, cast of friends, and its big, over-the-top musical numbers. In its early seasons, it was a sharp and funny satire of workplace life and the pursuit of happiness. It was a show with a unique voice and a whole lot of heart. But 9 seasons is a very long time to be stuck in a Cleveland office. As the years went on, the show started to lose its clever edge. The characters, especially Drew's bizarrely made-up coworker Mimi, became more and more cartoonish. The storylines became more generic, relying on standard sitcom tropes instead of the quirky, character-driven humor that had made the show special. To put it mildly, the last few seasons saw a huge drop in ratings, and the network seemed to lose faith in the show. What many overlooked is that the final season, which aired in 2004, was a classic burn-off. That's a TV industry term for when a network airs the leftover episodes of a canceled show in a bad time slot with little to no promotion just to get them off the books. It was a sad, quiet end for a show that once had such a loud, funny voice. That show ran out of jokes, but our next one ran for so long that its wholesome message started to feel like a never-ending lecture. 13th, Seventh Heaven.
Of course I'm tired. I've got 7 kids and a husband. Who wouldn't be tired? I'm always tired. I've always been tired.
When Seventh Heaven premiered in 1996, it filled a void in television. It was a wholesome, family-friendly drama about a minister, his wife, and their 7 children. The show was praised for promoting positive family values and for not being afraid to tackle difficult subjects from a moral perspective. For many families, it was a show they could all watch together. In its early years, it was a sweet and earnest look at the challenges of growing up in a large, loving family. But then it just kept going for 11 seasons. The thing nobody tells you about a show with 7 kids is that eventually they all grow up. The Camden kids went from cute children to teenagers and then to adults with their own families. But they all seem to keep hanging around the family home, getting into more and more convoluted problems. The show became less about relatable family issues and more about increasingly preachy and over-the-top storylines. It tackled every hot-button issue imaginable, often in a clumsy and heavy-handed way. By the time it finally ended in 2007, the show had become a parody of itself. It had a series finale at the end of its 10th season, but then it was surprisingly renewed for an 11th, a final season that most fans and critics agree was completely unnecessary. From one family to another, our next sitcom was also about family, but it hammered the same jokes home for 9 straight years. 14. Everybody Loves Raymond.
I'm uncomfortable with this.
Trust me, you need this. Open yourself up to genuine affection.
Your wife is so queer.
Everybody Loves Raymond is a sitcom legend. Premiering in 1996, it was a masterclass in comedy writing and performance. The show, about sports writer Ray Barone and his life with his wife and kids on Long Island, was made iconic by the fact that his overbearing parents and jealous brother lived right across the street. The family dynamics were painfully, hilariously relatable. The arguments, the guilt trips, the sibling rivalry, it was all mined for comedy gold. For most of its run, it was one of the funniest and best-written shows on TV. The problem is, even the funniest joke can get old if you tell it enough times. After 9 seasons, the characters on Everybody Loves Raymond were still having the exact same arguments they were having in Season 1. Marie was still criticizing Deborah's cooking. Frank was still being a cantankerous old man. And Robert was still jealous of Raymond. While the writing remained sharp, the show never really allowed its characters to grow or change. They were stuck in a loop of the same conflicts, week after week. What many overlooked is that the show's own creator, Phil Rosenthal, has said he had to fight the network to end the show after 9 seasons because they wanted it to keep going. He knew that they had told every possible story, and that stretching it any further would dilute the show's legacy. That show was stuck in a loop, but our next animated classic also spun its wheels for a few years too many. 15. King of the Hill.
I'm gonna help get him this alternator off.
Dale, I think you released the brake cable. Dale!
No, it didn't.
I tell you what, King of the Hill was one of the best animated shows ever made. Premiering in 1997, it was a brilliant and subtle satire of suburban life in Texas. The show centered on propane salesman Hank Hill, a man who loved his family, his friends, his state, and his lawn. Unlike other animated shows, the humor wasn't loud or cartoonish. It came from the deeply realistic and well-drawn characters. It was a gentle, smart, and consistently funny show that had a truly unique voice. But 13 seasons is a long time to sell propane and propane accessories. While King of the Hill never had a steep decline in quality like some other shows, its later seasons definitely lost some of the special sauce. You see, the early seasons were built on quiet, character-driven stories. But as the years went on, the show started to rely on more gimmicky, high-concept plots that felt out of place in the grounded world of Arlen, Texas. To put it mildly, the show just started to feel a little tired, like it was running out of things to say. It finally ended in 2010, but many of its most die-hard fans will tell you that the golden age of the show was in its first half, when the satire was at its sharpest and the characters were at their most real. King of the Hill was a subtle giant, but our next animated show is a loud one that has been on the air for over a quarter of a century. 16. South Park.
What is 5 times 2? Come on, children, don't be shy. Just give it your best shot. Yes, Clyde.
12?
Okay, now let's try to get an answer from someone who's not a complete retard.
In 1997, two guys named Trey Parker and Matt Stone changed animation forever with South Park. The show about 4 foul-mouthed little boys in a quiet mountain town was rude, crude, and absolutely brilliant. It became an instant cultural phenomenon, known for its fearless satire and its ability to comment on current events faster than any other show on television. For its first decade or so, South Park was arguably the most important and funniest satire on the planet, a show that was consistently surprising and smart. But the show is still on the air today, over 25 seasons later. And while it still has its brilliant moments, many longtime fans feel that the show has been running on fumes for years. The thing nobody tells you is that the show's production schedule, where they make an entire episode in just 6 days, is both its greatest strength and its greatest weakness. In recent years, that breakneck pace has led to episodes that feel rushed and underdeveloped. The show has also shifted from standalone stories to season-long serialized plots, a change that many fans dislike. The sharp, character-based humor of the early days has often been replaced by lazy jokes and a focus on whatever is trending that week. It's still South Park, but it's a shadow of its former glorious self. From cartoon kids to magical sisters, our next show lost a main character and kept going, but it probably shouldn't have. 17. Charmed.
I'm being stalked by psycho killers and I hide in the shower.
Premiering in 1998, Charmed was a huge hit. The story of 3 sisters who discover they are powerful witches destined to fight the forces of evil was the perfect blend of supernatural action, family drama, and romance. The power of 3, embodied by the Halliwell sisters Prue, Piper, and Phoebe, was a fantastic concept. The chemistry between the 3 original actresses was the heart and soul of the show. For its first 3 seasons, it was a fun, magical, and compelling series with a massive and devoted fan base. Then, at the end of season 3, a bombshell dropped. The actress who played the oldest sister, Prue, left the show due to on-set conflicts. Her character was eliminated in the season finale. To put it mildly, this was a crisis that would have ended most shows. But Charmed decided to continue. They introduced a long-lost half-sister named Paige to reconstitute the power of 3. While the new actress was good, the show was never the same. What many overlooked is that Prue's departure fundamentally changed the family dynamic that the show was built on. The next 5 seasons were a mixed bag of recycled Demon of the Week plots, convoluted magical storylines, and a focus on increasingly silly and revealing outfits. It limped on until 2006, long after the original magic had vanished.